It's wonderful to see all of you here today, and it is my true pleasure to welcome Scott Milner back to the Gator Nation. Scott received his undergraduate degree from UF in 1998, a little over 20 years ago. Oh. And then instead of becoming a double Gator, he went back to his hometown of Philadelphia, where he graduated from Villanova Law School, and he started working at Morgan Lewis, which is one of the world's largest law firms, right after graduation. And Scott is one of the rare people who has stayed with the same firm now for 21 years. Because of that longevity, Scott was able to be one of the founding lawyers of Morgan Lewis's eData practice group. He is now the leader of that group. You're going to hear more about not just his understanding of the ways technology is changing legal practice, but his enthusiasm for that change and excitement for sharing with all of you how legal practice has been transformed and will continue to be transformed in ways that we can't yet predict. That means we have to be flexible, creative, and open to new solutions, innovate as part of teams, and Scott certainly does that for clients around the world. Among many other things, Scott often, on behalf of clients, negotiates discovery protocols with U.S. Entities, U.S. attorneys' offices, and many other U.S. government agencies, including the DOJ, the SEC, the Federal Trade Commission, the Department of Labor, the Consumer Product Safety Commission, and the Office of Inspector General of the Department of Health and Human Resources. So Scott brings to us today a vast wealth of experience, but also an enthusiasm for the ways technology is transforming our profession. Please join me in welcoming Scott.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Dean, and thank you, Professor Hamilton, for giving me this honor. I love being back on campus. Although I guess I was mostly on the other side of the tracks, it's always nice to be welcomed back into the Gator community. So let me start with one story. I actually started law school when I was 12, so I'm really only 32 since I've been practicing. No, I've had a very interesting career path to get where I have been today, because when I was in law school, the idea behind it was, okay, what do I want to do? I took a year off between undergrad and law school to be a lobbyist, and I was like, this is fun, but I always said I was going to go to law school, so I made sure I did that. And then when I got done law school, I was like, what do I want to practice? And so the firm actually gave me the opportunity to come in and do some pretty creative stuff, which I'm going to get into. But why this excites me is I love the fact that law changes. And I think that setting up the future lawyers and the current lawyers to understand what that means is critical to the success of the profession. And it's exciting for me. So today, what I'm hoping to do is kind of walk you through, going to give just some basics. What is the definition of disruption and innovation? What is the industry saying outside of legal? Then I want to talk about history of disruption outside of legal itself, give you some real-world examples. Many of you probably heard of the companies I'm going to talk about, but it's kind of exciting to set the baseline because as lawyers, we're so anti-disruption and innovation, but in our real lives, we see it every day. Going to get into disruption in legal, tell you a little bit more about my background and the story of what we do, why there's resistance. I'm going to look for some audience participation. Not calling anybody, just hopefully get some audience participation there. How to set yourself up for success in this new technology and in new ways. Give you some takeaways, and then talk a little bit about who drives disruption and innovation. And obviously, if there's any time for discussion, I'd be happy to take any questions. So what is disruption? Got a clip here. Let's see if we can get it to play.
Could one of y'all pass me a biscuit?
You got another 5 miles, then you get a Luna bar.
Come on.
So, Coach, I was thinking about the music for our routine.
Really? We're gonna skate to one song only. Lady Humps by the Black Eyed Peas. What you gonna do with all that junk inside my trunk? I'm gonna get you drunk off my lady hump, my lovely lady hump.
I'm not skating to anything with references to lady humps. I don't even know what that means.
No one knows what it means, but it's provocative.
No, it's not. It's
Gets
gross.
the people.
And that, my friends, is why we're here. People say, what is disruption? I don't know, it's provocative. And I joke that a lot of terms sometimes in the world, the business world, and even in legal, they're marketing terms. But I'm going to try to talk to you a little bit about what it means. So by definition in the dictionary, disruption is defined as a break or interruption in the normal course or continuation of some activity, process, or etc. So one of the leaders of disruption, Clayton Christensen, who's a professor up at a university up in Boston, Cambridge, a process by which a product or service initially takes root in simple applications at the bottom of a market and then relentlessly moves upmarket, eventually displacing established competitors. And this is important because you think about this only from a business world. But what I want to share with you is it also happens to lawyers that aren't ready for new entrants to the legal profession. And again, some war stories we'll get into on that front. An industry dominated by high cost and complex products, lawyers can be expensive, is transformed by innovation marked by certain key elements: simplicity, convenience, accessibility, and affordability. Let me tell you now what legal disruptors aren't. So they're not breakthrough technologies that make good products better. So you wouldn't think of a disruptor as the new iPhone that's coming out per se. That just because it's making it, it's enhancing the product, it doesn't mean it's a disruptor. Not all innovative competitors are disruptors, and not a new market disruption are legal disruptors in any situation in which an industry is shaken up and previously successful incumbents stumble. So again, these are just market leaders that discuss innovation and disruption, what they're saying about these topics. I want to tell you why disruption is an opportunity long before it's a threat. So part of my career is if you sit idle and don't rethink how you perform certain tasks, you will become you will become person that's passed up. So from my perspective, and we'll get into a lot more details here, think of disruption and think of your law practice and the skills that you're trying to attain as an opportunity to enhance those skills before somebody else does it. And I'll give some real examples of this, but I hope that the end takeaway here is when you go back to this slide and say, all right, when I leave here today, if I leave online this session, how am I going to change the way I perform my duties? How am I going to look at my practice? How am I going to look at my future in my career? So this is fun because it's not hard to find legal disruptors outside or disruptors outside of legal. So, all right, who missed the mark for disruption? All right, I know you all probably don't remember this, but as a kid, I used to go to Blockbuster every Friday night trying to find a new release. And who remembers going to that wall and being like, no cassette behind that one, no cassette behind that one. I can't tell you how many times my mom had to buy me ice cream to appease me because I refused to go home because I couldn't find a movie. So what happened? Netflix came around. But who remembers the original Netflix? That you had to submit your request for videos, and only if they had those videos did they send them via DVD, Blu-ray, whatever it may have been. And it was still frustrating because I was still maybe getting one of three of my top choices, and then I'd usually lose it in my car instead of mailing it back, and you got frustrated that way. So why is it disruption? So little story here, we talk about it. The CEO of Netflix actually went to Blockbuster and said, hey, we see some of your problems. We've got an idea. How would you like to buy us for $50 million so that we can help your online movie rental? We don't need that. People come into our stores. We're packed. Look at our revenue. Well, we all know what happened to Blockbuster. But I think another story in there is, look what happened to Netflix, though. because they saw an opportunity and said, hey, we can't also fall into the same trap that Blockbuster did, where we're constantly sending their second, third, fourth, and fifth choices. That's how you started getting into the streaming and getting into that. So there's opportunities outside of legal. Kodak. I mean, I still print pictures. I have two lovely little kids, and I still want to print pictures, and I got to send them to school. But if you think of Kodak, they actually had somebody at Kodak that came to them with a digital camera prototype, one of their employees. And the management said, the pixels aren't good enough. You're going to take revenue away from our print business. If you remember, they were a print company. You're going to take revenue away from our print business? Why would we do that to ourselves? That seems silly. We're huge. They missed the boat, right? They did not recognize that print of pictures is going to change. The way you print pictures are going to change. Things are going digital. The other area they missed, and this is the whole theory of this thing called exponential growth, and we'll talk a little bit about in the AI space, but they were seeing the pixels as low quality, thinking low quality is going to take too long to be high quality, not thinking that the enhancement of the pixels would actually be much faster than they thought. So again, missed the boat, filed for bankruptcy, now worth under $1 billion. BlackBerry. How many people had BlackBerries in here? Anybody? I lived by it. I actually went to the doctor to have BlackBerry thumb issues, from typing so much. I was also really good at that one Brick Breaker game that came with it when I was on the train commuting to work. BlackBerry was primarily a hardware company for years. And then they didn't adjust the technology to see what their customers actually wanted. And effectively, they got out of the hardware business. The irony now is they're reinventing themselves as a software company. And now they're one of the leading security companies that for mobile device management tools on the market. In fact, our firm, to comply with many of our security audits, we use BlackBerry UEM as our mobile device management. And the one I didn't put up here is one of my favorite is Uber. It's hard. It's a cross between a disruptor and an innovator, because it really wasn't necessarily going after clients that taxis weren't supporting, but it was just changing the way we think of commuting. And again, I always used to joke, when I was a kid, my mom would say, never get in the car with strangers. And now I take it Uber probably 10 times a week while I'm in the car with strangers. So it changes. We put here just a little bit of a timeline on notable moments in technology. Anybody familiar with the company Aldi? There's a few. So I'm not going to lie, when I was preparing for this, I was researching all kinds of different angles and how the business world changes. And so I didn't know what Aldi was, but Aldi is a grocery chain that I believe is born out of Germany. And they reinvented the way they believe the grocery experience should be. They said, we're going to now come to the U.S. market. They started thinking 76 in Iowa. And they said, we're going to give you a no-frills grocery experience. And they did. You have to put a quarter in to rent the shopping cart, so you put it back. They have just 4 or 5 aisles. They're like, we have 1,400 items in our store rather than 40,000 SKUs in our store. But because of that, you have to bag your own groceries. All these things, you buy your own bags. Because of that experience, they're competing at a lower cost price than with the Whole Foods, even the Walmarts that are bringing there. So they're changing. And we all know about Apple, and I love the old icons because it just shows you how they've transformed to know who their audience is today. Facebook, there are more users than every country in the world. iTunes changes the way we consider music, although if you can go back, you can look at things like Napster and all that. So it's changing outside. I don't want to scare anybody, but this was an interesting study I looked at of Oxford University published it. They said 47% of jobs in the U.S. could likely be automated either through different processes or through AI. And I just showed you some of the industries here. And what does this mean to me? It says the future generation, our skills need to evolve. We need to be creative. It doesn't mean people are going to be out of work, per se. It just means the skills that they have to enhance their career are different. So I think this actually gives a huge opportunity for creative thinkers in these industries. One example I always love is the automotive. How many, there's long haul trucking. I mean, we're not that far off from autonomous driving. And yeah, maybe for a while, people will feel the need to require somebody sitting in that front seat of that long haul truck. But eventually, it's going to be driving itself. It's a whole industry change there. So this ultimately, I just wanted to kind of show you that AI is impacting. And I tried to equivalent, I like to play devil's advocate myself a lot. And I always try to say things like, what are we going to do for a certain part of the society that may not have the skills that are in these industries? What do we as a community owe to them? And it's education, it's opportunities to learn other skills to enhance these delivery of services. Probably didn't care about too much of my business background on that side, but it just gives you a primer of where are we at legal now. The legal field has managed to avoid disruption for a while because there hasn't been a desire or need to change it. And I'm just proud to be part of an organization in a university like the University of Florida who has dedicated resources in educating in legal technology and understanding the importance of these skills for our future lawyers. And it's a great honor to be part of that. But we're behind. Lawyers are behind. We were willing to do all these things in our own personal life, but not in our legal careers. I don't know why, but we don't. So I want to give you a little bit of history of my life. Went to law school. I took my second summer, worked in-house, did transactional work. Wasn't my cup of tea. Didn't really enjoy that. Came out during a really bad time in the market, and I said, what am I going to do? Got law school debt. I really do want to practice. Where do I go? So Morgan Lewis gave me an opportunity. Came in, supported the asbestos litigation practice. Back in the day, it was paper. I was going to these awesome Iron Mountain facilities in the middle of nowhere, collecting these onion skin paper. Do you all even know what onion skin paper looks like? I had, it was amazing. But long story short, how I developed and helped my career advance was, I said, we've got all of this stuff, and everybody's doing it the old-fashioned way. How do I enhance the process to streamline getting us from here to the end game? And our end game is win our case and do it efficiently. How do I get us there? So I was given the opportunity to join the firm and actually build out our eData practice group. Because that was beginning where there's some cases called Zubalake and the UBS Coleman case that were saying, all right, data is everywhere. And because of that, the firm said, hey, if we could build some defensible, repeatable processes, maybe this is something that actually works with our brilliant litigators that are defending these cases. That's a value add to our clients. It's a different way to deliver legal services. Because before that, you know what it was? Just put a bunch of associates reviewing documents. Put a bunch of associates, literally manually bait stamping with the old stamper on these hard copy records. That wasn't going to last long. But it took an organization to say, hey, I see the writing on the wall. Clients are eventually not going to want to pay for this. Clients are going to want us to be more efficient. And it's not a good use of our brilliant lawyers' time to do this. So long story short, I came into the practice, helped build out these processes, leverage technology, and we've continued to reinvent ourselves every 6 months to 9 months. I'm now doing things like contract management, and I'm actually using technology to help with the due diligence process. Things I never went to. I was a litigator, and now I'm actually trying to expand my skill set to say, how do I get ahead of who's coming to eat my firm's lunch? How do I get ahead of it? How do I train lawyers to think differently about how we deliver the legal services? So some early adopters. The first thing is the unbundling of legal services, and that's part of the history of eData. We were one of the first law firms that said, we're going to unbundle this particular track. At that point, back 15, 17 years ago, was doc review. We're going to unbundle that from the regular litigation cycle. Then it became other parts of the litigation process. Now we, in our practice, are doing data privacy. We're assisting with data disposition. There's a lot of ways to tackle that. But it started with the concept that you no longer have to hire, companies are no longer hiring maybe a single point of contact for everything. They're willing to take parts of that and change the way it works. Another, I think, early, what people called as a disruptor, is this concept of alternative fee arrangements. So for those that have either spent time in a law firm environment or understand that, most law firms still bill by the hour, right? We record our time. I joke that I still have it in my head, brush your teeth, 0.2, 6-minute increments, you comb hair, 0.1, and we live and die by the billable model. But again, as part of our group and part of the way that we sell is that clients don't want to be tied to that. They want us to be tied to success. They want to be tied to the success of the marriage. They want to be tied to creativity. How are we using negotiation tactics? How are we using technology to actually support our practice? So you see a shift from the billable hour to the alternative fee arrangement. That's another early adopter of legal disruption in the law firm environment. Adoption of AI in the legal profession. For those that have taken Professor Hamilton's eDiscovery class, I know he's preached a lot about predictive coding and technology-assisted review. But man versus machine, I think it was 2015, if I recall, there was 2006, but there's been case law in 2015 finally saying, okay, here's what we've got. But 2006, there was a study called TREC, where they actually used the same data sets and tested man versus machine. And we had the honor of being able to participate in that. Who thinks machines won? So raise your hands. All right, so about 50%. Who thinks man won? A few. I'm proud of the few. We got crushed. The men got crushed. The humans got crushed, just to say. So the technology learns, and the technology inevitably found way more relevant documents and key documents than the humans did going through the review process. Talk a little bit about technology-assisted review. Machine learning. This is just another iteration of AI. And for machine learning, what we're doing is we're taking the language in the records and think of it as reviewing my entire corpus of data and learning from that language and identifying indicators of behavior. So I'll give you an example, a real example. There is people are familiar with the Me Too movement, right? Okay, so you get data sets. Who has time? One, I can't come up, and I've been doing this for 17 years, I can't come up with a list of search terms that are going to capture every potential instance of a harassment or a comment that may be harassing. Two, I can't layer, I can read all the documents in a row, I can't layer and see the big picture when I'm in the documents. But what machine learning is doing is taking it and it's putting flags, indicators of trends, patterns, sentiment within your record and saying, hey, I'm not telling you to do your legal work. I'm not trying to do your legal work for you. I'm trying to make you smarter. So in those instances, and I'll give you one example that's anonymous, is I had an instance where it said in an email environment, and it was actually, I did my own email as a test. Scott talked to a partner in Houston and an associate in Philadelphia 49 times in 1 week at nights and weekends. Nothing like that in the rest of his data. Does it mean anything? I don't know, but if I was the alleged harasser and I was looking at the data, that would be the first place I'd look because I can't come up with search terms to say that. I would never have been able to find that information by looking at every document because they would have been all layered in different ways. You wouldn't have seen that. So machine learning is an area of there. And then innovation labs. So this may not mean a lot to people, but one of the things you see now in trends in law firms and corporates is having separate groups that are focused on innovation and disruption. And part of the reason there's benefits of separate groups is they're not confined by the potential bureaucracy of the status quo. They're not confined by maybe the concerns of the Kodak moment, right? You're taking money away from the print business by coming with digital, but digital is the future. So it's the same way in the law firm environment. When our practice was formed, if our price point was 50% of what they could have gotten from an associate doing that work, if the firm said, we're comfortable with the status quo, my group would have never moved forward. The problem is my group would have never gotten traction with a lot of clients because we were first to market to do that. So it's a way to say, how do you incubate key ideas at all levels? And you can read in the Legal Tech News, there's law firms that are giving billable credit for participation in innovation. It's great. There's lots of different law firms and organizations that are doing prizes for people that come up there. And I think it's brilliant. And the business sides have been doing this for a while, but this is definitely the future from my perspective. So let me talk a little bit about legal AI now and why it's important. In 2019 through September, there was $1.2 billion invested in legal technology. 2018, $1 billion. So when you used to read all this VC money and the investment going into companies and startups, it really was never at legal, right? It was always the cool things, Instagram and Facebook and all these other stuff. It's now going into legal technology. People see the writing on the wall that we're going to have to look at technology. How many people know LegalZoom, the company LegalZoom? A good handful. So LegalZoom, for those that don't know, you can basically log in and find templates and forms of documents like wills and estates and even family law type records. They received last year $500 million investment, which put their value at $2 billion. 4 years ago, they were about $450 million valuation. It's a self-help. I read one study, 60% of all family law filings in 2018 were without a lawyer involved. Doesn't mean the legal profession is going, but going back to my idea of lawyers think, well, I'll just go up the ladder because no one can then do that work. And I'm saying, no, we can just change the way we do it and still have that work that's being farmed out right now by templates. So I'm talking a little bit about certain type of current tools, classification tools. So think of classification tools as platforms that use machine learning to identify, extract, and categorize information. So the easy example is real estate leases. There's technologies that you can throw in 1,000 real estate leases, and they will, without any involvement from the attorney to start, will segregate change of assignment provisions, choice of law provisions, the key provisions in the contract, so that you can then export that and study like, all right, well, I have, of my 1,000 contracts, 500 have a choice of law of New York. What does that impact? How does that impact my negotiation? It also can help you extract value out of your contracts. Many clients and companies enter a contract, they save it to PDF, and they put it in a storage bin, or they copy it to a server, and they never look at it again. Many contracts actually have really valuable data points in there. And so as an entrepreneur myself, I'm thinking, how do I actually help my clients learn the value of what's in their contracts? And technology helps me. So now I can normalize all these contracts, I can pull key data points, and I was able to tell my client not only the legal risk that they were dealing with, but by the way, did you know that you're paying more per square foot in Iowa than you are in New York City? Well, you know what happened during that investigation? They found out the person that was doing the leasing was related to the person they were signing the leases with. So maybe there was a little bit, some friendly family help there. That's value. Automation tools. So platforms that are using machine learning algorithms to automate a task or systemize a process. So this goes a little bit into the LegalZoom. We have documents that you repeat and create over and over and over again. We have there's companies that are publicly filing documents all the time with the SEC as an SEC registrant. 90% of that contract or that document may be the same. And if you've got a template that you can almost fill out a form, like how many of us fill out forms like to go to a doctor's appointment? You go and you fill it out, and then it submits a form, and then you get an appointment sent to you. It's no different than what we're doing and seeing in the legal space. Is why are you having people type out all these provisions over and over and over again? Research tools. So platforms that use machine learning algorithms and natural language processing to search and retrieve information relevant to a legal question and then deliver the information in an accessible fashion. So I'll date myself. When I was in law school, I did research in paper. I had to go to the library. I know, you guys are, ooh, the library. And we had people that ripped the pages out of the books, and you're like, well, what am I going to do? Finally, my third year, they were so cool. I got a Lexis and a Westlaw password, so I could do some real online research. Super exciting. But now, I can actually do research by asking the issue question I want and getting information fed back to me rather than trying to come up with creative search terms to pull the information. That's not changing the fact that a lawyer is involved. It's changing the way we're doing the work. And I hope the takeaway is, I'm not saying, I'm not Richard Susskind saying the end of lawyers, but I do think the evolution of lawyers is the appropriate mantra here on this. And then there's prediction tools, platforms that digest unstructured data, which is, think of it as loose electronic files like Word documents, emails, to provide information and make predictions. How many clients do you think actually love to know, hey, I've got this IP litigation, and it's going to be filed in Delaware. Here's my facts. What do you think the likelihood of me being successful in this case is? I mean, I'd want that, right? And there's tools that are helping with that. For those that don't do litigation or are interested in contracts, think about the fact that if you could heat map your contract to say which provisions are actually important to me and which ones aren't. We have, my wife is in-house, and we talk about non-disclosure agreements, NDAs, right? So non-disclosure agreements oftentimes aren't worth the piece of paper that you write them on in many ways. But yet you've got companies that spend 1, 2 full-time people negotiating NDAs. And I talked to them and said, well, how many times are you litigating this NDA? 0. Okay? What is your spend for these 2 FTEs? X. We thought about automating the contracting process for NDA to reduce your spend so you can actually have these 2 brilliant lawyers do higher value contracts. Oh, I didn't think about that. And so it was a way, again, just to change the way they're doing it, and a lot of it's through the predictions. Like we were learning what provisions were problematic and not problematic. I've listed this, and obviously we'll share the slides. This, to me, these are real platforms being used by real lawyers today. And, although some of the things I say may sound provocative and, ooh, that's not going to happen to me, it's not. These are tools available. They're tools that are going to be used. And so I strongly encourage, as part of my success and takeaway here, is learn about them. Do some research. If there's something that interests you, if you're looking at transactional work, look at some of the tools that are supporting transactional negotiations. If you're a litigator, look at some of the tools that are actually supporting that process. It's going to be quite valuable in how you transform and differentiate yourself in the legal market. So really cool technology out there, and as I shared with you, it's only getting better. 1.2 billion goes a long way in legal technology and changing that. What else is a disruptor in legal? New roles. So, as I shared with another class, I just thought I could be a lawyer when I graduated law school. If I wanted to practice law, I'm just a lawyer. But there's new roles that are being rolled out both at the law firm environment and the corporate environment now that require a legal skill. Who's heard of the Chief Innovation Officer? It's very exciting. A couple people. So many companies and law firms are now actually having a person dedicated to disruption and innovation within their environment. They're not bound by the same 4 corners of the same profit margin, same resources, the same processes. They can explore the unexpected. I think about it as if I was an innovation officer at a law firm, the first thing I would say is, how do I disrupt and beat the AmLaw 5? Right? And then how do I do that? Where do I tackle that? So there's opportunities that are outside of that. Data scientists. I'll tell you, I had to take insects to get my last science credit as an undergrad because my science skills were pretty bad. I didn't even bother with computer science. But the idea here is that the amount of data that's out there today and available to us at the corporate environment and as lawyers is huge. But how do we see the trends that are available? How do we leverage these technologies? We've got teams of data scientists. We have law firms that I know have whole teams of data scientists. I could tell you 5 years ago that wasn't happening. And it was happening with the one firm doing it. It's changing. The way we're practicing is changing. Legal operations. So legal operations, again, is assessing what are we doing? Is it on spend, legal spend? Is it on process? So for example, if I'm looking at this and say, okay, am I staffed? Is my legal department staffed appropriately? Do I have the right people in this department? Am I doing getting the right information I need to be a smarter, better purchaser of legal services? And ones I didn't even include here is data privacy officer. With the change, with GDPR in Europe being rolled out, with the CCPA coming out in California, the California Privacy Act, there is a need for people to understand data privacy. And there's now roles available to lawyers on data privacy. So is this you? No? Are you going to be the CEO of no? Are you going to be the VP of status quo? Are you going to be the chief idea killer? Because they're out there, and you may face them. So I want to do a little game now. We still have a little time. So there was a study recently by Dr. Larry Richard from Lawyer Brain that said managing lawyers is like herding cats because lawyers are often last to change. So let's play a little game. So there's a study here which said, we're going to set the public score at 50 percentile. Let's compare them to the lawyer brain. Why is there such resistance for change? So the first category is skepticism. Lawyer skeptics. So defining skepticism is they question everything you see and say. You're always the devil's advocate. Again, I told you we set the baseline at 50. Give me who wants to shout out a number of where they think lawyers are? Scale of 1 to 100. 100 being most skeptic, 0 being least skeptic. Anyone throw some numbers out? 90%. 90%. All right, we got a lot of high numbers that are 90, 95. 90%. I forgot the prizes today, I'm sorry. I'll just give you aggregators. But this is it. So when you're thinking about change and all the things we talked about, if you're a skeptic, are you going to adopt these changes? Probably not. Whoa. All right. Well, see, I'm going to start being a skeptic. See, you're all seeing the answers now. No looking. All right, sociability. So the inability to be connected with other things and people being in mutual connection. So think of it as like wanting to be with groups of people, want to be with not necessarily like-minded people, different teams. As the dean suggested, sometimes ideas come from people that you don't expect. So when you're thinking about innovation and change, I look at it from the admin, person working in the cafeteria, the senior partner in the corner office. How many people think, or what percentage, if you didn't see it, do you think lawyers want to be social and have differences on that side? That's right. A little bit louder. 7. Dang clicker, I didn't even hit it that far. 7% is right. So lawyers are generally not sociable in some of these. Autonomy. Again, thinking of it as generally against waiting for somebody else to make a decision with you. Think of high autonomy as somebody who wants to just make a decision and run with it. Somebody with low autonomy is like, let's get the idea of everybody. So again, a little bit overlap in some of these categories. Who's got a number for me? I'm hoping you'll forget these in a couple minutes. 80, 90, 30, 89%. So somebody's got some photographic memories in here. Yes, so as you can imagine, lawyers are generally autonomous in the way they like to practice law. So if you're using technology and you're relying on other people to help you support that, like your data scientist, your data privacy officer, you're less likely to potentially adopt differences and changes. Abstract reasoning. So lawyers that love to think beyond the issue and offer conflicting ideas for conversation. So again, going back to the devil's advocate, I like to be the smartest person sometimes in my group, right? So when somebody says something, I want to say something different. So public is at 50, where are we at? 95? See, somebody's forgetting this one. I like it. 82%. So still pretty high. But I think we're getting better at being open to not always going out with the devil's advocate approach. Urgency. So think of it as a rush to get things done. I need to take this and I need to answer it now. Give me that brief tomorrow. Answer my call right now and give me the advice. Where are lawyers at? 71%. So I guess we got some slackers, right, in the profession? I don't know. Or maybe I'm glad maybe the different generation, we're looking at wellness, is actually saying maybe we won't be tied to our devices 24/7. I mean, I'm tied to it, but, Resilience. So what is that? Resilience is somebody that's afraid to take a chance. So think of somebody with low resilience as, I'm willing to take a chance. Somebody with high resilience, high resilience is they're okay with somebody saying no and saying, your idea is not very good. And there's people that are like, no, I'm always right, I don't want to hear no. Where are lawyers? 30. You guys remember that one, I guess. It's just really good idea, good memory. You're right. So oftentimes lawyers don't want to hear no, and it may be because that's just their personality type. It could be that they think it's a career killer. I'm telling you, it's not anymore. Bringing ideas to the table is important for advancing your legal career. It's there. It's how these companies that are creating these technologies are saying yes. Throwing 30 people at reviewing these contracts? No, that's not the right approach. It's using technology to help analyze those 30 contracts and having one lawyer spend time validating the technology's response and the answers. That's the difference. We're now willing, we need to be willing to hear no. We need to throw out the idea. I've taken some classes, a Lean Legal Sigma class, and the idea is there's no brainstorming is bad brainstorming. And we showed some videos in class about how when people were prototyping different technologies, what people were throwing out there was crazy. And people were like, of course you got people that are immediately like, that's a terrible idea. Instead of letting it sit on the board and saying, hey, that wasn't a great idea, but it created creativity for the rest of the brainstorming. And actually 2 or 3 data points from that crazy idea actually get implemented into the final prototype. So here's our summary. We're skeptic. We like to work alone. Not always social. Don't like to say no or hear no. And we want things right away. Now I wonder why we're not disruptors. But you guys will be. You guys will be. Is it you? Where do you fall on the disruption scale? So I hope you take home some of these questions to ponder when you think about your next move. Are you open to learning something new? I mean, you're in law school, you are creative, you're thoughtful, but are you willing to say, maybe there's something outside of my classroom work that I can learn on how to help with the theory and the actual coursework? Do you consider the market that isn't being discussed? What is your level of stubbornness? Mine was pretty high until I was told I shouldn't be, so I'm getting better. How do you take failure? You're going to be told no, and but that's the part of the learning curve, and that's how things change. Look at the person that brought in Kodak. Look at Netflix. When they go to CEO of Blockbuster and said, buy me for $50 million, I can solve this problem, they said no. What could they have done? Stay status quo? Could they have folded and said, well, the way I'm doing business right now is not doing much better. I'm not sending my top choices. No, they reinvented themselves. Would you offer an opinion in this very room knowing it may be incorrect? I was proud of you. I heard a lot of people throw out numbers even before you knew the answers. Take a chance. Can't be wrong. Do you believe that there are no stupid questions? There are no stupid questions. So tomorrow's lawyer. Get through some of this. So I think if you look at tomorrow's lawyer, fewer, smarter lawyers. Interesting. But I want to introduce you to the concept of the legal athlete. With technology enhancements, being a lawyer, you're going to be able to be nimble. You're going to learn different skill sets. I encourage all of any law student I've ever talked to, including junior lawyers that are practicing, look at project management opportunities. Not just within, I think it enhances your deliverable. And then I think there's going to be the smarter lawyer. And one of the things we ponder is specialization going to be the same in 10 years that it is today? Or is AI going to augment the intelligence that you need? So we ponder that decision, right? Is the ability that AI can help me do the research without being an expert in mass tort or certain science of a product or IP. If I'm a really good lawyer and creative, but I know how to use the technology, maybe that augments my intelligence. Tomorrow's legal institutions, legal education. That's why I love being here. Challenge the way we train future lawyers. Understand legal technology. Participate in our events. Go do stuff that changes just the theory. That's really important to understand the underlying theory of the case, but look at how it actually impacts that. Legal training. You know, we talk a lot about when I was growing up, I cut my teeth on a lot of tasks that are no longer happening because technology is doing the same work I did as a baby lawyer. But how do I become that senior specialist? It's investment in training. So I envision law firms, our law firm already enhanced our training program for junior lawyers to understand like how to get them from point A to point B quicker without doing the same type of work we did because technology is helping us get smarter at that. And then I joke that corporate legal departments, it's going to be 3 partners in a Siri. And I mean, right now I can ask my phone anything, right? I'm not sure it's always right, but at least I can ask. But you know, who knows? Next year it could be. So what are you going to do about it? I hope after this session you think a little bit, you think creatively about that. Look at some of those demos. Participate. I know at University of Florida, the law, we have our eDiscovery conference in the spring. Hope you participate because it brings different ideas of thinking about the practice. We're going to have providers out there doing demos of some of the technologies that will be available. Look for opportunities to participate in industry events that are interesting to you because there's often scholarships for students to participate in those events. Attend them. Go network. Because again, there's career paths that can match any need that you want, and it's important to get to see what's out there. And then I'll tell you one of the best things I did was take classes, even as a lawyer now, that are outside of legal profession. So I did a disruption course with Clayton Christensen, and I was one of 3 lawyers of my 250 people cohort. It was cool to see how business people think than just lawyers because they're less stubborn, maybe a little bit less urgent. They think about how to get things done. You know, they're willing to hear no. So think about that. It's not always legal. Another thing is I see a lot of lawyers participating in coding classes because they're looking at how technology does it. So just don't always think it has to be the law. There's opportunities to get ahead of this by thinking through some of the other pieces. And I already shared this, but project management, I can't say it enough. I think every professional could benefit from understanding the themes and communications within project management. Success, you all will be successful. It's just how do you navigate the changing legal environment? And I think it's actually an exciting time to be part of it because I don't want to be doing paper research. I'm super excited I got to do Lexis and Westlaw my 3rd year of law school. And I'm even more excited now that I don't have to make my research completely different, my strategy. And you can't end a good presentation without an amazing quote from Mr. Gretzky himself. A good lawyer does the same thing, and they're really good at it. A great lawyer is going to find out how to do and redefine the way they deliver legal services to their corporate or their client. So I hope today everybody leaves here saying, I want to be a great lawyer, and you'll skate to where the puck is, or it's going to be. So I know, I was like, see? I was like there. And there's my bio. I'm going to be around. Yep, perfect. 2:30, 2:45, and thank you for your time. And I think we're right at time. So.